Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Yegin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Shlita on the topic of new bracha on Tzitzis, when and why. Shabbos Chuvas being in talis Gdol. Have the great Kusa sponsoring a shir. Call Yegin Shir Torah 718-851-8651 and email ist@yeshivanet.com.
Nice to how someone noticed that a tzitzis that he's wearing was pasul. The question is, when he puts another beged on, does he make another bracha? And then, of course, we have the old Shacharis. If someone changes his Shabbos on an Erev Shabbos into his Shabbos tzitzis, he make another bracha. If the bachim go swimming during the summer for a nice time, do they make another bracha when they put the talis on? They change into their sports tzitzis, a different beged, a cap is more comfortable. The kids are going to have probably 24 questions about when is a new bracha required on a tzitzis. Now I'm going to try to be clear. We talk about tzitzis that includes talis cotton and talis gdol. There's basically no difference unless we indicate differently. So the truth is, if you notice, it's the common denominator is when is a new bracha required on a new beged, whether it's a different beged or sometimes a person had a break in the mitzvah, he went swimming or he played ball. So I think the way we say that we need for today is really to pose one simple question. Baruch Hashem, Yidden have plenty of mitzvahs and plenty of brachas on mitzvahs. We make a bracha on bedikas chametz, on mezuzah, on sukkah, on shofar, on kriyas hatayra. So the question is, what is the nature of the bracha on tzitzis? Is it similar to the other mitzvahs? Is it unique? So let me explain. I once witnessed this. Someone made a Roshana taka by davening. He made a bracha on the shofar and he started blowing. And then he couldn't get a call out. And he was trying and trying. It was very embarrassing. So a kind-hearted fellow took out a shofar that he for some reason had in his talis and put it down on the bima. And the Baal Tekei decided to try it. And he started blowing with the new shofar. And he blew beautifully. After davening, it became a whole tumult. How did you continue blowing with the shofar you didn't have das for? He didn't know he was going to blow on a different shofar. Is a new shofar mechayiv a new bracha? So people like the tumult, but the truth is there's no shayla. Because the bracha, the mitzvah is not the shofar. It's the kol shofar. Says the Binyan Oilam in Siman Lamed Aleph, the Mr. Bura in Taf Kuf Pehei quotes it, Sif Katan Dalit, that it's not a new mitzvah. It's blowing the same coil from a different shofar. And therefore, there's no doubt about it, no new bracha is required on the second shofar. But what makes it more interesting, the Binyan Olam has an analogy, which laida happens all too often. A person made a bracha on the aliyah that he got. In the middle of the laning, they found a psalm, the Sefer Torah. No doubt about it, you have to take out a new Sefer Torah. Zok Binyan Olam, and the Mr. Bura and Kuf Mem Gimel Sif Katan Chav quotes this, that when they start laying the new Sefer Torah, you don't make a new bracha. Why? Because the mitzvah is not on this Sefer Torah or that Sefer Torah, it's on the Kriya. So we have two mitzvahs that if you change it midstream, there's no new bracha. Can we say Hu Adin Talis, Gdol or Cotton? Obviously not, and I'll tell you why. It's very pashut. Because the truth is that tzitzis, every beged is a new mitzvah. A new mitzvah is a new chiyuv. But laning is one mitzvah, lane. This sefer, that sefer. Shofar is one mitzvah. This shofar, that shofar. So we're off to a good start. We eliminated that Sefer Torah and shofar is fundamentally different. But let's try weiter. Ma'aseh shehaya happens all the time. A person makes leisha b'sukkah at home by a suda, and he wants to bench by his parents or by a tish, whatever it is, he wants to bench elsewhere. And he had in mind b'shas the leisha, but he's going to bench and eat the rest of the suda elsewhere. Do you have to make another bracha when he goes to a new sukkah, a new setting? So the Magen Avraham and Taf Reish Lamed Tes says yes, new sukkah, new mitzvah. Tainet the Beis Meir and Taf Reish Lamed Tes Sif Ches and the Sharitzi and Sif Katan Tzadik Dalet quotes the halacha that it's not true. And again, the same fundamental chiluk. There's one mitzvah of sukkah. You want to eat it here or there? No difference. Each achila requires a bracha. Here or there is no difference. But talis, tzitzis, Each beged is a new chiyuv, new mitzvah, and new bracha. In fact, the Shacharis considers maybe even without das to eat elsewhere, it's basically a continuation of the same mitzvah. So now we have a new member of the club. We have shayfa, sefer Torah, and now we just added sukkah is different than tzitzis. But you haven't seen anything yet. Ma'isa shahaya, a person made a bracha on the bedikas chametz, Erev Pesach, and then he has to go to his office. He lives in Borough Park, the office is in Flatbush or Manhattan, he has to travel. Zok the Pri Chodesh and Tov Lamed Beis, Siv Cotton Beis, Tzarech Lachzor Levarich. You got to a new location, a new bracha on that bedikas chametz. He didn't talk out, but then again, it's a new location. Tainit, the Maimon Mordechai in Siv Cotton Daled, he quotes the Pri Chodesh, and he says that the Pri Chodesh is not right, and the Tainit is very poshut. There's a mitzvah bedikas chametz to check your possessions, your reshuyos. The office is yours, so why should a new bracha be required on an office? But talis, each beged is a new bracha. And the Mishnah and Sifkat and Zayin quotes both the Maimon Mordechai and another sefer Chok Yosef, and this is music to our ears. So now we have a new member to the club. Everything is different than tzitzis. Bedikas chametz, sefer Torah, shayfa, sukkah. So we're starting to see the uniqueness of tzitzis. Every beged is a new mitzvah. But you haven't seen anything yet. The Marshag in Chelik Aleph, Yeridei Simon Zayis Yitkot and Dalit, someone asked him the shayla. He made a bracha on the talis Gdol, and before he could put it on, someone grabbed it, and he had to take a different talis. Do you make a new bracha on this talis they didn't have das for? He made a bracha on his and have a different one. Says the Marshag, based on the tshuva of his Rebbe, the Marmshik in Yardei Reish Pei Hey, who says a bigger chiddush. Let's say a person took off his mezuzah to check, and it was kosher, no problem. But he decides, once it's off, let me upgrade the quality. He puts on a new mezuzah. Zok the Marshag that Lamaisa, since Lamaisa he's changing the mezuzah, you make a new bracha on the new mezuzah. Zok the Marshag, if you make a new bracha on a new mezuzah, kol shkein kal v'choyim on a new beged of tzitzis, because it's a new mitzvah. Then he adds, which is not common, he was a big Talmud of Mamshik, but he says, I have to argue my Greiser Rebbe, Mamshik. I don't understand, why do you make a new bracha on a new mezuzah? It's the same doorpost and the same mitzvah. You know, to give a mashal, if someone decides to put 10 mezuzahs on his doorpost, he has 1 mitzvah and 9 bal tosef, right? But talis, you can wear as many as you want. Some could tell him wear many tzitzis. So the Marshag is saying that in this respect, a mezuzah is not a new bracha. It's the same mitzvah. But Rabbi all agree that on a new beged, talis cotton or gadol is a new bracha. And what's amazing, the Marshag B'soich Devar writes, I'll prove you that you don't make a new bracha just in the Velterein. Because let's say someone's blowing shayfa and he can't get a coil out, he could take another shayfa, the kamapamim that happened to him, he writes, and there's no new bracha. So what do we see? Tzitzis seems to be different than everything else. Like the Marshag, even mezuzah. But wait, he's not yet finished. He says, imagine a person is about to be paid to his son, Pidyon Haben. He's holding the money, and I don't know the case, but I'll dramatize it. He has it on a yacht, he has an excursion, he has a fancy Pidyon Haben, and he makes the bracha, and there was a movement, and he drops the money into the ocean. Fafalim. So what does he do? Take out another 5 slayim. Do you make another bracha on the new 5 slayim? Ridiculous, right? Why new bracha? Zok the Marshag, the same is true with the mezuzah. So we have something amazing. We have everything on one side, but tzitzit is different. Think about it. Let's look again. A new shayf is up to binyan olam, there's no new bracha. A new sukkah is up to beis meya, no new bracha. B'dikas chametz, the Maimon Mordechai says no new bracha. Pidyon Haben, the Marshag says no new bracha on money. Sefer Torah, we saw the binyan olam, no new bracha. It's only tzitzis, and the hezbollah is beautiful. Because every beged, talis cotton or gadol, each beged is a new chiyuv. If you want to wear 2, so you have 2 mitzvahs. Now, of course, we'll soon see the Shulchan Aruch says, if you want to wear 10 begadim in one time, fine. 1 bracha pat is all 10. But once you're starting with a new beged is new mitzvah and perhaps new bracha. Before we apply this to the specifics, I want to make one more point, and that is important to mention. The halacha is, without getting into the details, shinui makom in hilchos brachos sarach levar. Let's talk about a very simple case. A person made a shackle here in Beis Medrash, and then he goes around the corner, and he comes back. The shackle is waiting for him. Do you make another bracha? So again, without details, typically shinui makom with shackle, there's no one else eating with you, sarach levarich. Let's say the same case regarding a talis. He made a bracha on the talis, he's davening in Beis Medrash, then he takes it off, goes around the corner, shinui makom, comes back. Do you need a new bracha? So we seem to be convinced that talis gets a bracha all the time. But in this case, it's a big chilek. Zok techai adam, in Nishmas Adam, and Yud Beis Aleph, that there's a fundamental chilek between achila and talis or mitzvahs, for that matter. There's no mitzvah to eat all day, put it bluntly. So you made a bracha, you left the location, so maybe you're not going to come back. That's shinui makom tzarich levarach. Your eating session ended. You want to start again? Make a new bracha. But zok techai adam, when it comes to a mitzvah, especially like tzitzis, it's a whole day mitzvah. So just leaving a location is not indicative of a change. So shinui makom ain't tzarich levarach. I'll give you a mashal, a dugma, l'saber ha'oizin. Taisus and the end of the first parak in brachos, the Rosh Hashanah both say that a person makes berachas haTorah in the morning. He's an erlich yid, he's kavei l'Torah before he goes to work, and then he's an erlich yid at work, and he puts his full kaiches into the work. He doesn't learn a word for 5 hours. Do you make a new berachas haTorah? The answer is no. Why not? Because you're not Mesiach Das from Torah. How you work, how to go to the basic keys, everything is Torah. So in a certain sense, that might be tzitzis. Tzitzis, a person wears all day. He made a shinui makom, but coming right back. Now, of course, the Chai Adam agrees that if you made a hesech hadas gomor, if you ended the mitzvah, for example, he decided to stop davening, took his talis, folded it up, put it in the zekel, and then he said, you know what, I have a few minutes, let me put it on again. No. Hesech hadas gomor needs a new bracha. So Rabbi said, let's chazer up what we have, that basically, that tzitzis is different than many, many mitzvahs. Each beged is a new mitzvah. If there's a shinui makom, that's not enough of a termination of the bracha. The one thing that changes is when you have a hesech hadas, and that requires a new bracha. Now let us apply this. Lamais will try to organize it so we can retain it. A question maybe you never thought of, but now at least we know the answer. Erev Yom Kippur, we all married people make a bracha on a talis gadol in the morning. And many hours later, we come to the Kol Nidrei, you make another bracha. Why? You knew that you're going to put on the talis Kol Nidrei. You've been doing that for years. The teretz is that Lamais is a long break in between. Now, we'll soon see how many hours, but definitely an Erev Yom Kippur is many hours. And Kiva Ega Taka on the Magen Avram, and our Simon Ches Sivkot and Tezayin says that a bracha that you made in the morning can't go later on a Levisha. It's just too much of a break in between. Now, if, again, you make one bracha on 20 begadim, b'shas ma'aseh, fine. But to make a bracha in the morning that goes for the afternoon is too much of a stretch. But someone asked me a very wonderful question. Because like many married people, the minhag is that he doesn't make a bracha on his talis cotton. You make a bracha on the talis gadol, and that pot is a talis cotton. So he's a lamdan. He said, listen, I made a bracha Erev Yom Kippur in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning on my talis gadol. I took off talis gadol. That's the end of that. But I'm still wearing my talis cotton that was potter with the bracha on the talis gadol. So maybe that keeps the bracha talis gadol in effect. And now I could put on the talis gadol much later without a bracha. So this is a fundamental question. When you took off a talis gadol, but you're still wearing a talis cotton, does that connect the two levishas? If it does, then you can put on talis gadol by college without a bracha. So the truth is, it's not so off track. The Beis Yosef, in the new print by Ois Yudalid, there are more quotes it in Semeches Sif Yudalid, quotes in Ogur and Simon Lamadalid, that seems to say that if the talis cotton is still on you, so the mitzvah is continuing. And that would help even for the talis. But the truth is, as the Beis Yosef asks, it's hard to understand the svara. Because as we just explained, every beged is a new mitzvah. So Maya Hanili, the talis cotton, is still being worn. That's continuing. But talis gadol bracha, talis gadol is off. You want to put on a new beged because of a different beged? What's the shaykhis? And as Beis Yosef puts it, im lavash talis shacharis ve'siroi, and you want to wear it to mincha, you don't make a bracha because you're wearing a talis cotton? What's the shaykhis? It's two separate begadim. How does talis cotton impact talis gadol? So the Magen Avram quotes of the Bach, Mr. Brewer and Sivkot Lamaches says this as well. He says, so what does the Augur mean then? Augur was one of the Gedol Kadmonim. So he says a little bit of Chiddush, but the Augur was talking about you took off the talis Godol and you're not sure this has a Chadas, not hours later. You took it off, I might put it back, might not. So you put it back right away. Maybe it was a suffix has a Chadas. So then we could say that the fact that the talis cotton is on you continues the Maisa Mitzvah. Oh. So then they could say when there's a suffix Chadas, then talis cotton works. But not that when you have many hours in between. So that's taka the minhag of Klal Yisrael. You taka put in the morning talis gadol with the bracha, but it comes before Kol Nidre, you put on the talis gadol with another bracha. Now, the truth is, the Paiskim say this, Berheitev and Sivkot and Tezayin, that so many hours in between, you cannot connect the two levishes. Ma'isa Shahaya, someone made a bracha on his talis, either cotton or gadol, and he was walking, Bekitza, one whole group of 8 tzitzis, on one corner, the tzitzis tore off. So now he has a pasla pair of tzitzis. I mean, he has daled kampais without the amount of tzitzis to make it kosher. So he quickly goes and he has to borrow a talis cotton from someone else. So this here, and indeed, that when he put that talis on, gadol cotton, he taka has to make a new bracha, even if it's a minute later, because it's a different beged, different chiyuv, and new bracha. And the Mishnah Berurah taka says this, that in Sivkot and Lamed, that if he made a bracha and then he saw his puzzle, he didn't check it enough, he would have to make a new bracha. And we find a similar halacha in Mishnah Berurah Chav Hei Nun regarding changing tefillin, because yours was problematic, then you make a new bracha on the new pair of tefillin. Now, we add, the Mishnah Berurah himself says when you change shofar and you blow with a different shofar, you don't make a bracha on the second shofar, but that we answered already. Shofar, the mitzvah is the kol shofar, so it doesn't make a difference this or that. But when it comes to talis, each beged is a new mitzvah. Changing into a new mitzvah requires a new bracha. The Betzina Rav and Chelik Vav Siman Dalet has an interesting shayla. Someone got a ketchup stain on his talis cotton, and he has to change it to a different talis cotton. So he writes the halacha brura that you have to make another bracha on the new talis cotton. Now, some people might be wondering, you got it stained, why do you have to change the talis cotton? There's the pashut. He used to wear a talis over the shirt, so you get a ketchup stain or whatever stain it is, you have to change it. It's like someone on a shirt versus talis. But anyhow, a new talis cotton. Now here you might say, well, talis cotton is not possible. The mitzvah didn't end. It just I want to look, representable. Okay, but if you're changing into a new beged, it's lav dafka possible. You make a new bracha, no doubt about it. Now, lamaisa. Here's the next question. Interesting shayla. Someone was walking, same case, and a group of his tzitzis got caught onto a chair in the shul. The whole thing pulled off. And it tore, but he's handy, and also he happens to have a tzitzis in his pocket, strings. So he quickly sews on, puts on, whatever, knots on the tzitzis into the fourth corner, and he didn't have a heschadas, he's still wearing it. So there are two problems with that. Number one problem is, why are you still wearing the tzitzis to put on the new pair? The Mishnah Berurah writes in two places, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and Yud Gimel Tes, that when the tzitzis are possible, take it off right away. You're wearing dal kampais without tzitzis. It's a bittul aseh. Take it off. Now, besides that, this tzitzis apostle. When you put on a new strings, it's a new mitzvah. So new mitzvah requires a new bracha. Now you'll say, but the Marshag, if you look at the tshuva, the Marshag wants to illustrate his gewaldige chiddush, and he says if you change tzitzis to more mehuda, you don't make a new bracha on the talis because you have more mehuda dike tzitzis. But that's not a conscience what we just said. Because if the tzitzis are apostle, so it's a new beged, new bracha. Marshak clearly discussed when the tzitzis were kosher, just it's more mehuda. In fact, the Beracha in Chaf Hey Yud Beis has a suffix even by that, more Mehuda. But we could definitely say when Lamaisa, the Tzitzis were apostle, Oz V'lei Mitzvasa. You recreated them, now it's Beged Chodesh Bolakan, a new bracha is required. The Mishnah Berurah quotes, interesting, I don't know how common it is, but a person made a bracha on the talis, and he noticed it was puzzle. That could be. So you take another beged, you have to make another bracha. But let's say he made a bracha on the talis, and during the levisha, it became puzzle. I don't know exactly after the bracha, before the levisha, maybe he whiplashed the fellow behind him with the strings and it got tore, whatever, I don't know the case. But the bracha, before the bracha and the levisha, the tzitzis became puzzle. So he says maybe since b'shas the bracha was kosher, it became puzzle before you could put it on. So then it's like one long hamshacha. You could fix it, then you could put it on without a bracha. But again, it's not very common. That's Mishnah Berurah and Siman Ches, Sif Kot and Mem Aleph. But this is, listen to a beautiful shayla. A person had a talis in front of him, what he thought was his. There were two folded talis on the table. He picked up one, did a halacha, he checked it and shook it out, and he's holding it, making a bracha. He made the bracha, he's about to put it on his head. He notices, this is not my talis. I guess he could see, maybe a Torah, maybe his is more dirty, more clean. He made a bracha, holding someone else's talis. Now, what do you do? Obviously, his talis is lying on the table. This talis that he picked up is someone else's. What should he do? So, l'chayra, you'll say, what's the problem? Put this down, pick up yours, and put it on. Wrong. He made a bracha on this talis in his hand, not the one on the table. That would require a new bracha, l'chayra. That's a new talis, new beged. To put on someone else's, it's not yours. Shosh le'midas gazlan. Worse yet, the halacha is on a beged she'ula, there's no chi of tzitz, you don't make a bracha. So what should he do? He should stand until Achiyov Elio. He's holding someone else's talis, his talis on the table. Good. So that's the Rosh in Chul and Perik Ches Siman Chavav. The Rosh says the minhag, listen to the Rosh, Nohagu l'satim tal shel chaveri afilu b'la yediyah u'mevarech. Why? Because nichel le'inish lev mitzvah b'moineh. Now the Rosh says a double chiddush. It's so much so that every person lets anybody else use their talis, not just you're allowed to, but you can make a bracha as if he gave it to you. Very the chiddush that the Rosh says, and of course Luka Yosef argues, but the Shulchan Aruch and Yudalit, Siv Dalit, passing like the Rosh. So what's my problem, right? The problem is that many later Achreinim, the Aruch HaShulchan, and Siv Yudalif, and some Svardish Poskim say, is this true today factually? Do people really don't mind you wear the talis gadol? People are mefunik, they have enough of their own lice and their own dandruff, they don't need your perspiration. The Aruch HaShulchan writes, a very stark lashon. Ma'oid yes l'siyashe b'din zeh. People are mefanokim. They don't want you with the talis, talis gadol. They don't want. So, to wear someone else's talis, now you have two problems. It might be shoshel and midas. We don't apply the rush. And then the bracha is a problem. To grab yours is also a problem. And Lamaisa, the Buchacha and Eish Lavram Sif Yud Beis, Kamat Nefurish says that to grab someone else's talis, your talis, which is really yours, is not the Eitzah. Because the bracha went on what you're holding. Now, I did see the Sefer Chaim, Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, on our Shulchan Sif and the Tilo Dov, Sif Koden test, both take exception to that Yisoid. And they say, why don't we say the bracha is chal on the Maisa Mitzvah? It's not chal, like an apple, it's chal on a food. It's chal on the talis. So even though I had the wrong talis, but it's chal on my talis. Then the eight would be to grab your talis and put it on. But most poskim, and you look back in the new Pischei Tshuva, HaChadosh, that's from Rabbi Yisrael Isserlin, and others say that Shar Tshuva also brings is that Lamaisa, we can't be makel like this Svar, because you're holding a talis, the bracha on that talis. So I think the only eitzah to avoid all problems is basically to make a ituf. Maybe don't put it on your head, because that's what people are makbid. Put it on your shoulder, and your philosopher on what the Shulchan Aruch says, you don't need a tifus Yishmaelim. The Goyin didn't make a tifus Yishmaelim, just put it on your shoulder, make an atifa. wear it for Dalar Amis, and then take it off. So the bracha is chal. You didn't trample on the Chosh Mishpat issue. Hopefully, if you didn't put it on your head, he's not makbid to the bracha, you could say Nichalei. Where do you go from there? Should I make a new bracha on my talis? Most places can say absolutely. The Bechach is absolutely. But I told you that Rav Shlomo Kluger and the Til David say it was chal on the Ma'aseh mitzvah. So the truth is, the best eitzah is if you could find a talis shel kahol, which you're allowed to make a bracha on because each person has a little bit bias, and you zikr didn't intend to get a third talis into the equation, that's for sure. You had no das on that, then you can make a bracha l'chol hadayis. But what's a more difficult shayla, I wish I had a better answer, and this happens in the wrong time, but it happens. A person goes out a moment before Ne'ilah, goes to the bathroom, he comes back, and he's about to start Ne'ilah, he's all charged, he looks, the talis is not his. Where's his talis? 100 or 400 people swapped. Now he can't make an announcement, whoever has my talis, return it. They already started Ne'ilah. So now he's has someone else's talis. You make a bracha, don't make a bracha. You know, you're going to Ne'ilah, we're all concerned. You don't want to have gzelas. You're wearing a talis gezel. I mean, I'm not saying it's a gazel, the rosh, the chashulchan. So where do you go? And you can't get a talis alcohol. You can't walk around. Everybody's davening already. The truth is, the best eight would be put down the talis and don't daven with the talis. But you're so distracted. People are looking at you. You think they're looking at you, or whatever. Person's not going to have any kavana. So again, I wish I had a better eitzah. I'm not an eitzah macha, but to wear the talis, you have a problem. First of all, is he nichalei? Hopefully, maybe he took yours, maybe he's nichalei. But to make a bracha, I would make a bracha. It might be sha'ol, shalayim bidas, and then it's not even the chiyav bracha. So again, if you could somehow find another talis that you're very chayiv to make a bracha, talis shalakol, it's a better idea. Otherwise, what can you do? If the person's so distracted, he's davening the ilu without a talis, so put it on and hope that you could rely on the shittas of the Shulchan Aruch based on the Rosh. Ma'ishay, it's a true story. Don't ask me how it happened. A person, like he does every day, he's not the best daven in the world. By Ashiv al-Tzion, he quickly takes the talis tefillin and he's out the door. And Itaka has his talis walking the door and someone taps on the shoulder. Today is Rish Chodesh. Where are you going? Now, I daven, hopefully, Yalav Yavai, Halal, and laning. I stopped asking questions long ago, how things happen. He's walking out, folded talis. So he has to go back. Of course, he has to put on talis again. Baruch Hashem, not the tefillin, but Musaf, only talis. Do you make a bracha on that talis? This is a Maisa Hefsik Gomer, folded into the talis ekel, mamish, a bona fide Hefsik. And Takus, the Poiskim say, what's the Shaila? You fold it up, you end it. It's a minute later, doesn't make it how long it is. This is a Hesach Hadas Gomer. However, I found probably half a dozen Poiskim have a problem. The same problem from different angles. The first is the Das Torah, the Bejana Rob, and Sif Yudal of Our Simon Ches. He says, this is a Hesach Hadas B'tois. The Magen Avram and Kuf Tzadik Sif Kot and Gimel regarding a Hilchas Bracha says, Hesach Hadas requires a new bracha. But Hesach Hadas B'tois is discounted. Plus, Zoktim Arsham, you're wearing a talis cotton. So maybe that bridges the two Levishas. And he blives with Tzorchi and Ktsas. Not a very definite psak. I don't know which way he means. Tzorchi and Ktsas. Then I saw Rabbi Yonis and Steif and Simon Lamed Beis also has this shayla. I guess it happened more than once. And he says this Hesed B'tois. And besides that, you're wearing a talis cotton. And then he throws in a new svara that really, once you read that you wore a talis for the bulk of the Shacharis, so Musaf is only a minhag. Maybe you don't have to make a bracha on a minhag for Musaf. Then I found the Be'er Moshe, Chelik V'ches, Simon Mem Dalid, same shayla, but he comes with a different makar. Everybody knows the well-known halach. It's a beautiful concept to remember by Leil Seder. Imagine a person is a little tired or he's in a rush to finish up. The kid say after he has his physical dessert, he says, okay, let's bench. He has a kais. And everybody shrieks, hey, we didn't have Afikaimen yet. So he made a Hesach Hadas as far as the bracha Rishayna, but he didn't have Afikaimen. So this is the Shulchan Aruch and Taf Ayin Zayin Beis based on a Taisvis, that Pesach by night, you're not a Balabas. You're a Takad Rachmona. You're by the Bari Oilam's Tish. The Rizal's Nusach, you say before the Seder, Askina Sudasa, the Kutcha Brichel, the Hoiben night. So, Hesach Hadas B'tois. So maybe the same thing applies to our fellow. You're going to leaving musaf without musaf. What's going on here? So that's what he wants to say. And maybe he says, and there he comes out, takal maisa, you could put on the talis without a bracha. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky in the Das Noite Omid Tzadik Tes has the same analogy to afikoimen betoyis. Now, one thing I wondered, the Bejana Rav certainly did not forget the concept of takad rachmon afikoimen. Why didn't he stel zu that instead of Magen Avram and Kuf Tzadik Sif Katan Gimel? So the emphasis could be that the afikoimen is a more extreme connection. Like we spoke about this, the unique opportunity of Leil Seder. This is mamish by Bar Yoilam. So something you can't disconnect from. So maybe taka, that's something that you can't compare to a regular talis and a regular Rosh Chodesh this morning. Oh, but hilchas brachos, kaisel bracha, no. So why don't you compare the two? So again, the raya from Atak Derechon maybe it's not a raya, but if you notice that I saw also the Shevet HaKosin Chelivav Siman Yud also has a shayla of Eistachos. This story happened all over the world. But Lamaisa, it seems that is enough of a suffix that we could say suffix brachos lahakol, put on the talis, and don't make a new bracha. The interesting question I should mention, when someone swapped talis with someone else, and his mazli got back his a little while later, does he make a new bracha on his talis that he's finally reunited with? That for sure not. Why? Because that's a heschadas b'tois. There wasn't even heschadas. He wanted to get it back. So the few minutes in between is loymayla v'loymayid. Shaila, which could be, let's say it happened today. I'm not saying it did, but let's say it happened today. A person goes home after Shacharis this morning, and he knows for sure, he remembers now for sure, not nervin, he said Mashiv Ruach, which of course you're not yaitza during the summer. So he has to daven over. And he wants to put on talis and tefillin to daven over. Do you make a new bracha on the talis? So the truth is, this has chadas b'tois, but really not. He finished davening. His tois was he left that Yahweh Yavoy. So that could be more of a tzad, unless you say maybe it's only for, you don't really have to daven the talis, but that's for al is not enough. And basically we could say that since it was a hesach hadas gomor, the mistake was in his saying Mashiv Ruach, a new bracha should be required. A question that people ask, especially when they learn hilchos tzitzis, because it's a chiddush to them, that a talis, you will of davening, and bechesed. It didn't fall off during Shemini Esrei, which is a big problem as far as picking it up in Shemini Esrei. It fell off during Gavol Tzion. So you pick it up, no problem. The question is, do you make a new bracha when you put on the talis? So we're wondering, what's the shayla? It fell off, it took me all of 15 seconds. I had no hesach hadas, so it was betoyis, so if that much. That's all great until you learn the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch and Sif Tezvav writes beferish that if it fell off and it's still connected somewhat, no new bracha. If it fell off entirely, a new bracha is definitely required. Why? Zok the Magen Avram, because oz delay mitzvasa, the mitzvah is over, finished. Talis fell off. Not much of a hezbollah. But it seems to be that if the mitzvah ended, even if it wasn't your decision, now is a new ma'aseh levisha. Now, of course, we could say, Adrabah, I want to wear talis, I have das in my talis, against my will it fell off. Why is that worse than heschadas b'toyis? And that's probably where Rabbi Kiva Eiga on the page is coming from. He quotes a Magen Avram, B'Shem Ashla. Magen Avram is Chaf Hey, Chaf Aleph. Now let's say someone's tefillin during davening is way off, not a little bit off. Mamish is on his nose. Mamish. Kimunach Bakufs, like Mr. Brewer says. He's in his pocket. And he puts it back. He puts it back. So the Charish make a new bracha, because the mitzvah was definitely ended. Tefillin on the nose, you're not yoitza. I'm not so a little bit off. I'm talking about it was puzzle. So the Shla, Magen Avram quotes it, but since everybody davens with tefillin, the entire davening, you never Mesiach Das. The mitzvah doesn't end. You want the mitzvah to continue no matter where it is. So Kiva Eiga says, why doesn't the same apply to talis? Maybe talk in the olden days, you don't find this in times of the Tanoim, they had a special talis Gdol. Okay, so you could daven without it. But today, every year, davening with talis Gdol, so the mitzvah doesn't end. It fell off. It's not any worse than tefillin that's off its place. Now, it's a little chiddush to me. Mishnah Berurah doesn't quote this, but Lamaisa, Kiva Eiga says it, and it's mistavra. And I could add, it's very similar to the Chayei Adam's Yisoid, that there's no shini makam by talis because you never mesiach das from talis. Ein ata ben chorin li batel imena, we could quote. You don't want to daven without a talis. So again, I'm a little hesitant. The Mechaber says something, and the Ramot doesn't argue, and but the Prima Godin in Sifkot and Yudalid, Rav Shlomo Zalman and Chav Gimel Yudalid Halichas Shloima, and many other poiskim, I saw a number of other poiskim, say that Lamaisa today, when you learn Shulchan Aruch and you learn Mishnah, you won't see the Kiva Eiga in the Mishnah Berurah, but then again, Kiva Eiga is a Kiva Eiga, and the poiskim quoted, and again, like we added, it's very similar to the Chayei Adam's Yisoid, that the mitzvah doesn't just end unless you ended it. And when a fall fell off your back, Bal Karchai, you didn't end it. So you could definitely be saimach on this and put it back without a bracha. Now, what's pashit, someone made a bracha, and he's holding it, and he dropped it out before he put it on. So that is no shaila. Because if you had an apple and you dropped it into the ocean, the Mechaber says, and you take another apple, you have to make another bracha, a different apple. But if it fell on the floor and you pick up the same apple, what's the problem? So talis is not different. I'll give you another question of Hesach Hadas that is simple. A person goes out to the restroom during davening. So the emes is that, without this is a different share, but if he goes out for Gedolim, he makes a new bracha, according to many shittas, on the tefillin. The question is, how about the talis Gadol? So the emes is, will say, what should be the chilik talis or tefillin? We group the two together, but there's a big chilik. And that's the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Chaf Aleph Siv Gimel. That basically, tefillin is kedusha atzma, like Sefer Torah and mezuzah, and you're not allowed to bring kedusha atzma into the Beis HaKisei. So behechorach, when you go in, you have to take off the tefillin, and that's a definite hesach hadas because you can't be in the Beis HaKisei. Period. But talis is a mitzvah. Varaya talis cotton. Many people go. I think everybody goes in with the talis, to the Beis HaKisei with the talis cotton. So what's wrong? It's not a hesach hadas. It doesn't end the mitzvah. But wait a second. So then, 1 second. So why do you take off the talis gadol when you go into the Beis HaKisei? So here the Taz explains that that's not because it's too much. It's more kedusha than talis cotton. But a talis gadol is a beged miyuchad l'tefillah, and if it's miyuchad l'tefillah, it doesn't belong in the Beis HaKisei. In fact, the Taz says a chiddush weiter than that. You don't go in the Beis HaKisei with a kittel. A kittel is not kedusha. It's not a mitzvah like talis. But beged miyuchad l'tefillah should be treated differently. So really, b'yisoid, there's no difference, gadol or cotton, regarding this halacha. But out COVID, we don't go into the Beis HaKisei with the talis gadol. But if you did go in and you come back, the mitzvah didn't end because you could have gone in with the talis gadol as well. So here we come to an interesting yisoid. You go in and you take off talis and tefillin, you come out. It's possible that on tefillin you make a new bracha and not on talis. But of course, you have to do things right. First you put on talis without a bracha, albeit, and then you put on tefillin like the regular order, mal mekaydish ve'ein marid. The next question is not as simple, but very important, and that is: so what is the time span for a hesach hadas that requires a new bracha? A boy goes swimming, or a person goes to the mikvah and it takes a long time. Is there any time span? So the Mechaber in Siman Ches, Sif Yudalid, says you took it off, put it back, a new bracha is required. That's a big chiddush in Mechaber. But the Rama says, no. It's not just put it back, new bracha. There has to be a hefsek. He does not say how long requires a new bracha. When you look in the Beracha, you start to get nervous. He speaks about, he quotes the Malbon Atzachayim, that if you go to the merchatz or mikvah, same idea. Those days they didn't have showers in every home. They had a public bathhouse. You come out, you make a new bracha, of course, come out of the merchatz, and you're outside, you wash your hands, you make a bracha on the talis cotton. So, Zok the Mishnah Berurah, after a merchatz, you make a new bracha, it's not the minhag. So, you'll say, I have das to put it on when I come out, but das doesn't help if it's a hesach hadas. So, he says, I found the Bach. The Bach says that a merchatz is not a hefsek. Zok the Mishnah Berurah, the best idea would be, when you make a bracha in the morning, and you know you're going to the merchatz or mikvah that morning, so make the bracha on the talis cotton, and the bracha should go until you get to the merchatz, and you come out, you have to make a new bracha because the bracha didn't include the second levisha. So when you see this, you start to wonder, wait, that means that when the people go swimming, is mamish they have to make a new bracha on the talis cotton? So the emes, the oral tzir, b'tzir abba shol, the memdalad yud, he taka says on a merchatz that you last a half hour or more, a new bracha is required. And it's pashit, swimming also. Not such a riot to us, because he's going with the Mechaber shita, that even a short amount is a hefsek. But what I found extremely helpful, I think this is the emes and halacha, you look at the Rav, who always has guidance, especially here, in our Siman, Sif Chav Dalid, he says if there was a hefsik of kama shois between Levisha, he took it off and there's a few hours in between, kama shois, you make a bracha. Kama shois? How much is that? Very ambiguous. So you look on the bottom, they send you to Siman Chav Hey, Sif Chav Tes, that regarding tefillin, he took off tefillin, Beizay Gimel Shois. So Kama Shois, Beizay Gimel Shois. Then they send you to a third place, the Rav in Tov Reish Lam Bates with Gimel regarding Sukkah. Show Shesayim, 1 or 2 hours is a hefsik. And the Tzitz Shulchan and Siman Ches, Sif Katan Samach Gimel is bothered 2 or 3, 1 or 2, or Kama Shois. Make up your mind. So Reb Shlomo Zalman in Halicha Shleima in Gimel Zayin Divrei Pi Chacham Chen Yikarm Divrei Emes, he says the Rav probably Dafka left it ambiguous because you can't put a time span. 6 hours after Fleishik, you can say 6 hours. We have a reason why 6 hours and not 5.5 or 7.5. But here it's a question of Hesach Hadas. It's more of a mindset and attitude than Zmanim. We could say Be'erech 2 or 3 or 1 or 2. So he says that, Be'emes, he says, maybe even more than 3 is not a Hesach Hadas. Now, he's not very Ma'irich, but I'm telling you, I think he's right. Let me explain a little better, okay? The Rav Steinman, in one of his Svarim, says he was once with the Heilige Chazon Ish and Yom Kippur, and you have to realize the Chazon Ish davened the Sikin, and there was a long break between the tefillah. It doesn't say which tefillah, but there's a long break, and the Chazon Ish took off his talis for the break. It was at least 2.5 hours later, he said at least. He came back, he put on the talis without a bracha. That could have been 3 hours. Why not? So I think it's very poshut. Because no Yid, especially the Heilige Chazon Ish, is Messiah Das from davening Yom Kippur. There's a long davening, he started early, and he had his time, he went to learn, he wasn't Messiah Das, but for whatever reason, he took off his talis. But you understand, you're not Messiah Das in the middle of Yom Kippur, a day of Tefillah. Now let me give you the flip side of that. A person finished davening Shabbos morning, he davened very nicely, he's going to a Shabbos Simcha, and it's a long, stretched out Sheva brachos, bar mitzvahs, whoever it is, and he doesn't live here, so he takes off his talis and puts it in the hall. Now he wants to bring his talis where he's staying, but there's no Erev in this community. To leave it there might get lost. He says, you know what, I'm going to put it on L'Shem Levisha. Do I make to make a bracha? It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They make a bracha. Of course, if you're doing it L'Shem Levisha, he'll wear it home, L'Shem, and get a mitzvah, why not? So, Rav Ozna, in Chelik Yud Siman Beis, says, the Rav says 2 or 3 hours, maybe even less. And it's beautiful, because you daven Shacharis, you daven Musaf, and you finish davening. You're putting it on, and you even folded it up on Shabbos, the way you're allowed to fold it up. Now it's a new Levisha, so maybe 3, even less than 3 hours. So it's really totally in the mindset. So therefore we could say that, and Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says it, but Lamaisa, if it's within 3 hours, you could pretty much assume it's not a Hesach Hadas. Unless, again, it's a Hesach Hadas Gomer. Now what do I apply this? I think swimming, where people go swimming, even if it's an hour, more than a half hour, but again, no one is Messiah Das. I mean, you're not thinking about it as you swim, about the talis, but you go swimming, you have to take off your talis. You have no choice. You put it on. So swimming, basically, unless it's a 3-hour lull or more, there would be no chiyuv to make a new bracha. Hatzalah member, he goes running on a call, do you make a new bracha when he comes back? So you can't give a klal. These malachei rachamim, they run for hours. They could go to the hospital and they follow up. If someone's a person that he goes, he has no idea if he's going to come back within the 3 or 4 hours, or he's basically just stopping because he has to be busy, oisik b'mitzvah. So then even if he comes back a short while later, that was a Hesach Hadas Gomer. But if he knows it's not life-threatening, he's just checking it out, so then within 3 hours, you could say it's not a Hesach Hadas. So it's with a little bit seichel and understanding the situation. Question, which Lamaisa is important to mention, whenever you make a new bracha on a talis, let's say the fellow after the Shabbos Suda, and it's 3 hours, he makes a bracha. Do you make an ituf like we do in the morning with a talis Gdol? What's the shayla? I don't know what the shayla is, but someone asked me, maybe it's only in the morning, you have to put it on once and be atifas yishma'elim. So you look at the sugya, it's not correct. In the beginning of Siman Ches, the Torah brings the machlokes if you need atifas yishma'elim or any atif is enough. Mikra din, the Shulchan Aruch said you don't need atifas yishma'elim. That was the Goyin's minhag. But we want to make sure that we have the mitzvah chaladeis. So b'shas the bracha, we make the bracha, and we make it katifa kedasu kudin, so the bracha is chal l'chol hadeyus. It's not a din in the morning, it's a din in the bracha. So if you're making another bracha, do it right. I saw the Shevet HaKasi in Chelik Gimel, Siman Gimel, who has this very shaila, and he's more naita. It's once you did in the morning, it's enough because we yoyt to the mitzvah in the morning. But then I found recently, Tak in Chelik Vav, Siman Yud, he says he found a Rizal that when he put on a talis after a long break, he was making a tifas Yishmaelim, and he has charot where he wrote in Chelik Gimel. So Lamaisa, we do make a new atif and poik chazi. I think Klal Yisrael, when they come back to shul Erev Yom Kippur for Kol Nidrei, they make another atifa. So that's l'chayra, it makes sense. Now sleeping as a hefsik, let me be very clear. L'maisa, when a person sleeps by day, it's advisable to sleep with tzitzis. First of all, it's a beged shel yoyim b'yoyim. And the fact that you're wearing it, the mitzvah continues. Now you say, but I'm sleeping, we always say when a person sleeps, he becomes from a gavra to a chefza. You can't count him into minyan, but he's not ois yid, he's not ois bar chiyuva, and especially like Shlomo Zalman develops a theme that a mitzvah you could do when you're sleeping could be, it doesn't stop when you're sleeping. Now other places say this more emphatically, l'mashal sukkah. When you're sleeping in the sukkah, you have a mitzvah. You go to sleep with kavanah and the mitzvah continues. So it's yitachan, the mitzvah tzitzis continue when you're sleeping. But let's say if you can't, it's too hot, somebody takes off his tzitzis. So Mr. Bura, this says, in Sivkat Membei, it's very interesting, Eitzah, take off the tzitzis. If you can't sleep in it, you can't. What can you do? But at least cover yourself with it like a blanket, so then when you wake up, you don't have a suffix making a new bracha. So everybody asks, what kind of eitz is that? You're not yotz if it's a blanket. So could be, the word is like this. You're coming back to put it on again. And if you have it physically on you, so there's a physical connection, that would be enough to say that you didn't disconnect from the mitzvah, and you can put it on below bracha. Now, how many hours do you need to be mechayiv a new bracha if the tzitzis was totally off? So again, we could say sheinas kva, especially by yoim, with a 2 or 3 hours, the same yisoid, l'chayr makes sense. After 3 hours, a new bracha should be said. Now, what seems more pashit, if a person sleeps at night, if he takes off his talis cotton, so the night and the sheina is vadei mechayiv a new bracha. Baraya, the most resilient bracha that we have is brachas HaTorah, right? That lasts, throughout the day. Yet, if you sleep at night, a new bracha is required. So those that take off tzitzis at night, in the morning you put it on, you make a new bracha. Those that sleep with tzitzis at night, either they want to make the mitzvah early morning, whatever the svara is, basically, avada when in the morning you don't make a new bracha. I'll take it off and put it on. It doesn't work. I have a mind the night before, but you're continuing the whole night. So basically, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says that if you slept in your tzitzis, you cannot make a new bracha in the morning because the mitzvah went without hefsek. But he does add, this is in the Halicha Shloima, he has the following wonderful eitzah. It's an investment once in a lifetime and it works. You sleep, let's say you go to sleep Monday night with your tzitzis you're wearing. Tuesday morning when you wake up, you have a different talis cotton and you put that on. So you take off the Mondays and put on make bracha on the Tuesday. New beged, new mitzvah. Wednesday morning, you put on the one for Monday. So chayiz chalila, you keep on making a new bracha. Now, if someone can't afford another talis cotton, so no problem. You're wearing it straight, no new bracha. Of course, you can't you're not supposed to do a mitzvah without a bracha. The Marshal calls it an oven Gdol. But here, the mitzvah continues. Like if a person zoyach sit in the sukkah 7 days straight, he makes one bracha. Not doing an aveira. So the bracha is not necessary. So therefore, those that sleep in tzitzis, there will not be a new bracha in the morning. Now, some people, based on the Riyah Kodesh, they sleep with shlaf tzitzis, especially at night. Now, there's a problem with that because you lose the mitzvah. If it's a beged shalayla, so you don't have the mitzvah whole night. But at least the maila is that in the morning they put back on their talis cotton, then a new bracha is required because it's a new beged, new bracha. Now, lamaisa, this is clear that all agree a new beged is new mitzvah. And I want to make a point. I had this shot in the camp when someone's tzitzis became puzzle, and he couldn't wear it. So he asked friend, "Can I have? You have an extra pair?" Goes, "Yeah, sure." So the person that didn't have tzitzis said, "Could you give it to matana manas lahachza?" And the friend says, "Are you confusing tzitzis with dalet minim?" The answer is no, he's not. He knows the Shulchan Aruch, against Siman Yudalid, that at Beged She'ula, there's no Chiyav Tzitzis, no bracha. So if he just borrows from his friend, then it could be he's not Yaitza, or his Zichar don't make a bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah says, yeah, but if your friend is giving it to you, he wants to give it to you in a way you can become the mitzvah. So it's understood that he meant to give it to you, but Torah's matan maslahachzeh. Fine. But not all agree to that. So this person was right. Say, could I have matan maslahachzeh? And then you could make a bracha l'chol ha'deis. The same is true with the talis Gdol. If for some reason yours is posel, whatever it is, so borrow from someone else, ask him for matana maslahachzeh. The good news is that a talis shel kahol is automatic because each person has a bias. Now, there is an interesting question to consider if someone in a shul where it's privately owned, a person in a basement, has his own, it's his shul. So that's not a talis shel kahol. Now, of course, by makes him a lav malka, he says it's your shul and everything's you, but we know the truth, it's his. So then you have to be careful. So hopefully, if the Rav, whoever's in charge, has seichel, he makes the same tonight. I'm giving the talis to anybody who wants to use it, so then it's automatic that it's talis shel kahol, even though this shul is not shel kahol. Now, lamaisa, when a person switches into Shabbos tzitzis, Erev Shabbos, so whether he's a bacha who made the bracha on the weekly tzitzis Friday morning, or we'll soon see a married person that makes a bracha on talis Gdol and patas the talis katan, he's to make a new bracha when he changes into the Shabbos tzitzis sometime hopefully before Shkia. So the truth is, even though he knows for the past many decades, he's always changing into the talis cotton for covered Shabbos. But as I told you earlier, there is a new beged, and it's many hours later. So the bracha in the morning can't cover later. And as early as the Teres Chaim, Sif Cotton Chav Gimel, and many others say a new bracha is required on the talis cotton. Now, Lamaisa, make sure, if you're doing it, do it right, make the bracha before Shkia. Because once it's already after Shkia, it could be a Safek Laila, and you don't make a bracha on talis by night because there's a din in Yoim. Now, I know the Magen Avram says that Lagabe Tzitzis, it's not Tali in Yoim V'Laila, it's Tali in Ureisa Moisai, which is a very good svara, but Mr. Brewer and Sivkot and Zayin is not so excited about that, because maybe Taka, once it's Safek Laila, Lagabe other things, it's Safek Laila, Lagabe Tzitzis. So you do it right, and of course, Erevim Kippur, the same applies. Now, Lamaisa, the question, and we have the Shayla in the camp where Bochum change into sports tzitzis. I guess they have a cotton, or they don't want to get their wool tzitzis dirty, but they change into sports tzitzis. So I didn't find this in a Shulchan Aruch about sports tzitzis, but it's very similar to Shabbos. But one thing I will say, when they change back to their, after sports, to the original tzitzis, then they don't need a bracha. Because that's less than 3 hours between one and the other, so that no bracha is required. Now, as we all know, the mitzvah of tzitzis has nothing to do with talis cotton or talis Gdol. The mitzvah is asher techasaboy, to get enveloped in it, les'atei batzitz, like the nusach is. And to make a long story short, they never had a talis cotton in the times of the Gemara. The Mordechai, one of the Rishonim in the halachos ketanois, Tafsaf Kuf Lam Betes, mentions this new minhag of a talis cotton, which it wasn't always. Either they had long robes that they had dal kampais, or talis Gdol, probably like a long robe or a frock that had dal kampais on it. But he says people started making talis ketanos. It's not ashtechasa boy. You can't make lesatev, and he's very unhappy with the whole talis cotton bichlal. That's a halbatzar. But as the Darkei Moshe points out in our Siman, people had very small talisos ketanos. Pasha, they couldn't afford big begadim, and they ended up making a bracha on a small talis cotton that wasn't even the shear of amal amma. I mean, the Gemara says it has to be that a gadol is not embarrassed to go out just with that alone. Would you go out just with a talis cotton? So you ever went to Chaim Kanievsky or the Stipler? They had these long talisos ketanos like the Goyen had, Chaim Volozhin had, went down till the knees, till the ankle. I'm sorry, Berkayim. So that's good. But how could we make on a talis cotton? But Lamaisa, Mordechai says it's kosher, it's shir amal amma, and that's the minhag Yisrael. But you make a different nusach al mitzvahs tzitzis. Now here comes the big yisoid. Comes again the Darkei Moshe. I don't think he's the first, but in Tzivkot and Beis ha'orach, and he says, but since Lamaisa talis cotton is questionable, if you're anyhow bring a talis gadol, either a married person, a Sephardi, or a German descent, So do it right. Make a bracha on the talis gadol, and that part is talis katan. Now, even though the nusach is different from this is like Tzitzis and this is Lesate, but the nusach is not ma'akiv, and that's taka the minhag both Ashkenazim and Svardim. Even though the Ramaz idea, but I saw the Ben Ishkai, the Chavachaims, that's the minhag of Svardim. You make a bracha on talis gadol and part is talis katan. Wonderful. Now, this has a problem. I'm not a problem. It's a wonderful problem today. You know, learning so much more in the morning. And they wake up, let's say, 6 o'clock in the morning, they put on talis katan, and they first daven at 8 o'clock, there's a long learning break in between. So, some question, maybe you should make a bracha on talis katan, 2 hours in between. But Zazab Shleim Zalman, Alicha Shleima, what's your problem? If it works for a half hour backwards, obviously the bracha goes backwards, and it's enough, oivel asiyasam, because of what you're wearing in the future. So, what's geitach on a half hour or 2 hours? And to my knowledge, that's the minhag Yisrael, the bracha we say, later, even 2 hours later, goes backwards to the talis katan that you put on 2 hours early. So basically, I saw the Stipler made a bracha, but the Shita say it's not a problem because he had these long talis katan. But basically, that would be the right minhag. Now, once a year, I'll tell you a fascinating shot. I hope it won't be negaya this year. But on one Yom Tov we don't like to have, it's the Yom Tov of Tisha B'Av. We have a problem because no one wears talis gadol in the morning. And especially if you're davening late afternoon, right before Shkia. So where's the bracha on talis katan? You put it on in the morning and go, a whole day. So Shleim Zalman Alicha Shleim and same Simon Gimel said he told his children at least once a year sleep in the tzitzis, and that's Tisha B'Av night. Then you have it when you wake up. Now some Hasidim don't ever make on a talis katan. I know this is surprising. I once went to a Hasidic Gadol and I asked him about talis katan. He goes, "Wer macht the bracha of tzitzis?" So I didn't say anything. I said, "I do," but it's Yedua. So the Beracha in Siman Ches, Siman Tezayin, Yud Zayin is concerned, like I told you, about the validity of the bracha. So he says, it's for Bachrim that are not wearing a talis gadol, it's kedai to hear a bracha from a married person that's making a talis gadol. In other words, what we do Shavuos morning and the Tisha B'Av, the Bachrim do, they do the whole year. The Minchas Alazin, the Chaim V'Sham Amabeis also told his Bachrim not to make a bracha on talis katan. So that minhag exists, so they wouldn't make a bracha on the Shabbos or the sports one. That's for a different reason. I'd like to leave you with some ha'ara just to think about. Ma'aseh shehaya. A person made a bracha on a talis gadol. He's about to put it on, and just then he heard someone said, Shelo yasani goy. That's his favorite bracha. He loves that. And he said, Amen. And then he goes, oh, what did I do? Between the bracha and the levisha, he was mafsik. I picked that case because if you made amen to someone else's bracha on talis, no, because some hold it okay. But this is a definite hefsik. No, what do you say he should do? So Yakov Shleim Zalman, a brilliant yesod, and also in our Siman Gimel, Ha'ara 39. He says, if you're married and you're making a bracha, l'sa'ate, talis gadol, also pattering the talis katan, so right when you said the bracha, it went on the talis katan, that beat the hefsik, so don't worry. Now, my shaila is, if you don't make a bracha, if let's say come a person from a Chassidish background, you never made a bracha on talis katan, could you say in this case, l'kula, he'll say it's going on talis katan. The whole life, you didn't. So think about that. Number two, a person who's makpid, never make any bracha before mikveh in the morning. His mazel, he lives very far from the local mikveh, and he can't go to the mikveh and come back and put on talis. Doesn't have the time. So someone told him he should put on talis, and there's no erev in his community, so he can't carry it to the mikveh. Someone told him just put on talis at home, have in mind not to be yoitza, go to the mikveh and come out, put it on the Shem Atifa. Now that's problematic. First of all, why lose a mitzvah, that whole going? But more so, the Beracha has a novel chiddush in Siman Samach. If you do a ma'aseh tzitzis, have kavanah not to be yoitza, so guess what? That's a bittul mitzvah. You're wearing the al kanfais without a mitzvah. So it's worse. Maybe taka, even the tzitzis could be carrying, but that doesn't bother me, because the ma'aseh is still functional. Tzitzis, they're not possible. But it's much better to be soymech what the Shulchan Aruch says. In the beginning of Siman Ches, he says, you make nagul l'sateif, mu'umid, and you make a bracha. So everybody asks, in fact, the oilas tamid, I thought fakert, bracha first. So he says, but let's say a person doesn't have clean hands or not a clean guf. You put on the beged, and you make it later. It goes backwards. So this mikveh, you can do the same. And my last shal, I'd love to hear from the oilam, I don't have information. In yeshivas, bachrim daven for the yomid, shacharis, every day shacharis. Yeshiva davening could be, especially Monday, Thursday, an hour and a half. So the question is, should they have in mind when they put on the talis in the morning, l'shem mitzvah? There's no issa for a bracha to wear a talis, just the minhag is not to, but you're wearing it anyhow. Why delegate it to become a l'shem kavod, tzibur, and don't make a bracha? Have a mind to be right to the mitzvah, make it a tifa, and then you could also pat your talis cotton. If you dafka wear it l'shem kavod, like a aliyah or a duchening in a moment or two, I understand. But you're wearing it such a big part of the morning, so is there such a kapeda for a bracha to wear a talis gadol? But tzarachian, I couldn't talk to you. Good.
Shem Iyar shir like a big Shacharis Smith for today's shir. As Hashem after minhag, Smith will say a sikkim of the shir. The schedule of the daily shir Monday through Thursday for the next 5 weeks is available on the beamer or on the back table. Kanani Beracha Hashem Artzakadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakis Es Yisrael L'Fikir Hebron T'ay Mitzvah Shanema Al HaChofes Eman Situ Yagol Terviyadeh.